Patrice, we got Ben on the line. What do you want to ask him?
With the partnerships that you're doing, how do you vet or do your due diligence on who to partner with?
Numbers don't lie. We're very upfront in the sense that we pick people that we like. We pick people that we think will work well with, but we also have a line of like, this is business. We're going to go into business together. We need to understand your style.
Hey, I'm Brian Briscoe, host of the Diary of an Apartment Investor podcast. And this podcast is different from everything else out there. I bring together new and aspiring investors on each and every episode and let the aspiring investors ask the questions that they need answered. And if you're an aspiring investor yourself, you probably have the same questions. So before you get to this episode that we have prepared for you, make sure you hit the subscribe button and that little notification bell to make sure you get notified every time we post a new episode. And now, enjoy the show.
Welcome to the Diary of an Apartment Investor podcast. I'm your host, Brian Briscoe. Very excited for today's show. We got two amazing people on the line with us. It's another one of our Ask the Expert episodes. And today we're talking with Ben Nelson and Patrice Tisdale. So guys, welcome to the show today.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome. And all the listeners know this already, but tradition is we bring our experienced investor on first. So Ben, let's have a little bit of a chat. How you doing today?
Good, man. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks for coming on. So real quick, tell us a little bit about yourself and your background and what got you into multifamily.
Sure. Yeah. So I was an events producer by trade, mostly in the action sports space for a long, long period of time. We found ourselves in a niche where we were producing some really high-end stuff and some really difficult things. In real estate, we talk about niching quite a bit. And we found ourselves in a space where we got called to do some really fun, innovative, weird things. We got to break a couple world records over a period of time.
Oh, wow.
But I also just realized how much time I was spending on the road, truthfully. We looked at real estate, owned a couple small things with my brother, Eric, who's been on your show as well, some quads. And really, he's the one that gets all the credit. I was on the road actually at the time we started bringing up the idea. He said, hey, you've been gone for 40 straight days. I have two little boys. And I'd been discussing like, hey, I've got to figure out a way to kind of peel this back. And so we should really start looking at the syndication space. I think our skill sets really match there, along with two other guys that we have in Wild Oak Capital to make a run at it. So that's the biggest thing for me is transitioning the ability to work with individuals, to work with people from afar, to look at deals, go through budgeting, and really see what that looks like, and to kind of put models together of what might make sense in the future and go from there. So real estate was a natural leap for me and a natural way for us to start working on some other things. I still like to produce. We still produce events. We are now building out our own event series for real estate to help investors. Our big push right now is, in my opinion, there's so little exposure to what real estate can do for people. So we're really passionate about, hey, if you're in the rat race and you want to get out, real estate may be a great place for you. Also, if you're like me, but you don't necessarily want to get or need to get out and you love what you're doing, we can also help you compound your wealth. We can help you build a back end to give you time freedom. You may love what you're doing, but all of a sudden we can give you time freedom as well, or show you how to get there. So it may fit for you in that way too. So in a nutshell, that's kind of where I come from.
I love it. I love the opportunities that real estate provides. And I mean, once upon a time, I was in a spot, where I was gone a lot, and that's part of the reason that I moved into real estate too, is to make sure that I'm in control of my time, left for different reasons, but, it was all job related. So how has your lifestyle time with the family changed since you jumped into real estate?
I mean, it's great. Like I said, we still produce. My biggest thing is, again, coming from events and being gone and really scheduling our life so much of like, can I go to a baseball game? Can I be a coach of a football team? Like I got to coach my son's flag football team. And that for me, that was huge. Even having a spring break and being able to count on the fact that, hey, I'm going to be at spring break and we're going to go skiing. I'm going to take you to my parents' house. Like especially now, my kids are in the years, they're 8 and 9 right now. It's really formidable years, in my opinion, just being able to spend time and be around and go to practices and just be really present and also take those trips. We can count on spring break. We can count on the fall breaks. Like that's just been such a change for me.
Yeah. No, I love that. I love that. And I think I've talked about this a lot. I think the sweet spot for kids, according to me, is between 6 and 11, maybe 6 to 12 years old. They're old enough where they can do fun stuff with you. They're going to remember it, and they're not teenagers yet. So they still like you. you know.
I had that conversation today. I was like, I
Yeah.
ski with my boys. They
Yeah.
can hang and they still think dad's cool so far.
Yeah.
So that's the, I love
Yeah,
that.
I've got a 12-year-old right now, and all of a sudden dad's music is terrible, and it's just like, yeah. So she's at the spot where I'm not sure if she likes me every day now. But on the bright side, I have two kids in their 20s as well, and they've started liking me again. So
There you go.
maybe the new sweet spot is 20 to 30. We'll see. But well, cool. So talking about getting into multifamily, what were some of the challenges that you faced, transitioning?
I mean, some of it is learning something new, right? For me, working really hard to get really, really good at what we were doing and what I was doing. I spent all of my time and all of my energy getting there. So transitioning out, some of it made sense and some of it was brand new. So realizing that it was going to be uncomfortable and being a newbie again and being, new to it, like that was hard. And sometimes it still is. Like, I'm not going to pretend I know everything by any means. We learn more about this space. And I think there's years and years of learning you can get in all the niches, but that was tough. And I will say the other thing that was hard is, that my youngest brother was ahead of me, right? Like that was a new experience also, like taking a step back and like learning from my sibling, my youngest brother was tough in the beginning, like, truthfully, but we're an amazing partnership. It's one of those things that, I'm blessed that he's one of my best friends in the world and he's a great business partner. So I would say if I could do it again, I would, but it's the transition of skills and that imposter syndrome, a lot of those things. And like now having that breath, like, oh, like being able to naturally move forward how I am and who I am is a really important thing.
I love it. And the sibling thing is dynamic, is something that, interesting. You said that. So you're the older brother, he's the younger brother, but it's working. So it's definitely working.
But Eric, he's not a dummy.
No, he's not. He's really smart too. So yeah, good guy. Engineer, if I remember right.
He is indeed.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, the only people that are smarter than engineers are lawyers, right? Right, Patrice?
Yeah.
Definitely.
I'm saying that because she's an attorney.
Absolutely.
So there we go. But anyway, let's talk about, one of the projects you guys have done. So pick a property, or a deal, your first, your favorite, whichever one, and give us an idea of what you guys do at Wild Oak.
Yeah. So we are mostly in the multifamily syndication space and the value add space. We have done some, like I said, individual investing of our own. Everybody kind of has some of their own properties. Some of our partners were really collaborative in the sense that we know people invest outside, but even within our realm. And we also invest in interior. So we want to be cheerleaders for our own people and other people outside. But for us, we primarily focus in that, B, C class, mostly Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, finding properties that are underserviced, underutilized, undermanaged, and really going in and adding a value add component to that. So some of our properties, we've been really fortunate in the sense that we've built a lot of relationships and asked a lot of right questions of the right people. And we've found some diamonds in the rough, if you will. We really like the Tulsa market for a lot of reasons.
Nice.
But I would also say that we've found some partnerships that we really value, especially in our property management teams.
Nice.
So I wouldn't say I'd pick one out individually by any means, but I would say I'd picked our property managers that we value them greatly and we consider them partners. So
selfish question, who's your favorite property manager in Tulsa?
I'm not going to
tell him.
I will tell you that. I'm happy to share that.
That was illegal advice.
We're growing with them, and I'll say her name. Her name is Amy. This is the lead, and she's fantastic. Her team is fantastic. We're really, really proud to be working with them.
Awesome. All right. Well, cool. So let me ask you, I mean, one question I love asking everybody, and that's about motivation, so what's your big burning why?
This is interesting because for a long time, I kind of had a why, like my big why was family. Right.
Yeah.
But it honestly, if I'm being truthful, it just never connected because I was still on the road. I was still traveling. Time freedom became very, very clear when it was clear that I was gone more than I was around, that I was missing the 4th of July, that I was missing basketball, baseball, football games, that my kids were growing up without me. That's not who I am. And that's where it really came. So my burning why is my family, but it's time with my family and being chooseful and purposeful. We all know when we're working, we have to make choices. And even in this case, like time freedom, complete time freedom, I'm envious of people who have that, but I'm not there yet. However, I have the ability to start making some very serious choices about that. And that's my why.
Awesome. I love it. All right. Last question for you before we put Patrice in the hot seat. It's not that hot, but what's next for you?
Yeah, we continue to build out what we're trying to do, both on the investing front, but also on the teaching front. We've had a lot of very, very smart, talented people show us the way, and we like bringing those people around folks who are learning. So we're building out an event series. We've started one's called Pay It Forward. We're starting another one called the Headwaters Project in October in Denver. It's a small gathering. We keep it small on purpose. So we bring people who have been in the game a long time and some people who are starting out, and put everybody in the same room in a very confined environment on purpose for multiple days, and really get into the nitty gritty. And then on the backside of that, we're building out some more adventure-based things and more learning. So if you're interested in that, please reach out to us. You can just email me at Wild Oak Capital and we'll get you info.
Awesome. Sounds great. All right. Shifting gears slightly, Patrice, how's it going?
It's going good. It's going good. Cannot complain.
Awesome. Well, thanks for coming on the podcast today. Please do us a favor. Tell us about yourself.
I am general counsel for the Drivers Union out in Seattle, Washington. But I also have my own legal practice where I work with entrepreneurs and real estate investors to figure out how they can push those boundaries to maximize their profits and keep their business going.
Nice. So what has you interested in multifamily?
I own a couple properties with my husband, my partner, and we have a 5-unit is the largest that we own. And, you've daydreamed about, oh, maybe you can go, bigger, and trying to figure out the way to effectively do that in terms of raising money. And so it's looking into that and wanting to have that ability. So like recently, after we've had the 5-unit for a couple of years now, we're like, okay, let's stop talking about it and let's actually do it. Yeah.
That's cool. That's cool. So you've seen the value. It's something you've always wanted to do, and it's just like, boom, now's the time.
Now it's that time, to what Ben was saying. We have boys and they're older. They're at the teenage years where we can kind of make them work.
There you go. Nice.
So now it's like, let's stop and let's, jump in there. There's freedom and everything else that comes with it.
What did you think about my sweet spot comment? 8 to 11, 8 to 12, or do your kids still like you?
I was like, well, my kids are boys, and I always think that boys have a different thing for their mom. I was like, I can see it for the their interaction with dad. I was like, you lost that.
Yep, that is kind of true. My kids have a much different interaction with their mother than me, but
your girls, she is going to come back around. You just got to give her that space. Like I went through that with my dad, where I'm like, you don't know what you're talking about. Like, let me be. I don't know. I don't want to go to the mall with you. But then, yes, as they get older,
Dad, drop me off right here, please.
Exactly.
Like, come on. I mean,
not the front door.
Yeah. No. We've got a cool car. Come on, but
Nope.
All right. Just checking. Yeah, I think you're right. The mother-father dynamic is different, but my oldest 3 are girls. Maybe my son will like me when he's a teenager. We'll see. But anyway, so I mean, you talked a little bit, family, why you're doing things. If you could, boil it down, and crystallize it, what's your big burning why? One step deeper than family.
Time freedom to volunteer and do the philanthropic aspects of things that I'd like to do, helping in certain developing neighborhoods, and also the freedom to be able to be like, hey, I'm going to go lay on the beach for 2 weeks, I'll see you later, and not worry about I have to check email, I have to do this, I have to respond to that, etc. Putting things in place where I have the freedom and ability to do that.
I love it.
So that's the selfish aspect of it. I love the water. So anything that will allow me time to go whenever I want to.
I've always been torn between water and mountains, and the beach.
I know.
Yep. It's just like, oh man. I think my answer is eventually we're gonna have, a place to live next to the ocean and a place to live in the mountains. So that's it. So
Eric and I were scheming on that right before this.
Yeah. I mean, is there a place with both is the question, where you have warm water and mountains big enough where you can ski close by? It's kind of like I don't think there is. Yeah.
It's a give and take. You said warm
Washington.
Water.
Yeah. I said warm water.
Warm water.
I said warm water. Yeah.
Well, warm water for how long in the year?
Yeah. It's a good
now
question.
I'm thinking about, I'm like, Washington, maybe the state of Washington, because they do have a lot of nice beaches and they have mountains.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, you got Alaska.
They have ski resorts and mountains, but Yeah, I'll find a place, I think the answer is just going to be, we'll turn into snowbirds, but well, cool. Hey, thanks for sharing that. I appreciate it. Now comes my favorite time of the show. Patrice, we got Ben on the line. What do you want to ask him?
So the first thing, actually, one is a question based on what you were saying with the program that you're looking to start for new investors. I'm curious because in part of my looking to figure out, you see different programs, and a number of them, it's throw a whole bunch of videos at you, like, watch this, and then we can talk. And I'm very much more hands-on, interactive. I want to be all in the business to see what you're doing, how you do it, et cetera. How are you frameworking your program for those new investors to learn?
Yeah, that's an awesome question, because everybody learns differently. I'm the exact same way. I'm a doer. I learn far quicker if I'm in the mix. So it really depends on what you do. So we try to meet people where they are. And there's a lot of different types of investors too. There's a lot of people who want to be completely hands off and completely passive and just want to know the why behind it and then give money, right? Seems like you're way more involved. So I would say it really depends. We do have modules for people who learn that way. We do have coaching programs for people who want to be more hands-on, say, hey, let's spend an hour. Let's go through this. I want to learn underwriting, or I was underwriting this deal and I can't figure it out. Let's do this. Or, hey, I'm trying to figure out this with a property manager, or any of those things. Sometimes coaching is the piece of that works, and you get some time to do that, which is great. I find a lot of times also that the in-person is really valuable. And the way that we design our in-persons right now is it's designed around cap maybe 50, 60 people max in a room. And so there will be some presentations where people will talk, but we really try to maximize time where we'll break out and say, hey, we're going to do 6 groups of 10 and maximize that individual time, because you'll get a lot of people that are along the entire spectrum of investing. And somebody has a ton of experience in single family, but they want to get into multi, or some people who are in quads, or like you said, have a 5-plex and they want to get into multi. And we start talking about, and we'll break it up, say, this will be underwriting, this will be capital raising, for example, this will be asset management, just giving some topics off the top of my head, and say, okay, cool. On the day you'll have 3 of these breakouts. I really want to learn about asset management. I really want to learn about capital raising, and I really want to learn about underwriting. Like, that's one of the focus of my time. So over the course of that day, you're going to sit in a really small group with a couple of people who are really experienced in that. And just like this, spend your day like, hey, I'm bringing all these questions. And usually what happens is you may have 3 or 4 questions, but the person next to you has 3 or 4, and the person next to you, and you're like, oh, I didn't even think of it that way. Or you may have something that somebody else asks and it makes you think of a different way. What we find is there's a lot of people that match with the way that they work too. Like, you'll find partners, people coming out of these programs like, hey, I found somebody that I invest with. I found somebody that's now my partner. I found somebody that I found they're doing some deals that I decided I thought I wanted to be an operator, but after learning it, like, I don't. Now I just want to be an LP. So I decided to spend my time spending money there. So we try to design it to meet people wherever they are and however they learn.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, I've done a lot of thinking about that as well. I did a couple of coaching programs. I'm always doing different types of coaching. The way I set mine up is, individual group sessions. I mean, similar to what he said, individual group sessions. And of course we throw videos at people because, if you're up in the middle of the night, you're never gonna get somebody on the phone, but you can watch that video. But love it. So
no, that's perfect. Because that's one of, as a new investor, one of the things that I've been looking at. I'm like, you want that interactive, aspect of it, like seeing it, because I can think about it and read about it. It's like law school. They teach you all the things, but then when you get out and you start doing, you're like, hold on, I need a sample order. Like, how do you file a motion? How do you actually file in the court? They don't teach you that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So that's perfect. With the partnerships that you're doing, how do you vet or do your due diligence on who to partner with? 1, for the experienced people, and 2, if you've done anything with new investors, how do you go about vetting both groups?
Sure. There's 2 little kind of different nuances there. So in partnering, we do have a couple of co-GP ventures with some folks that we really, really appreciate. A lot of it has to do with, I think it's probably very similar to if you're going to bring a partner on in your business. Numbers don't lie. We're very upfront in the sense that we pick people that we like. We pick people that we think will work well with, but we also have a line of like, this is business. We're going to go into business together. We need to understand your style, and also understanding who we are. You know, Eric and I tend to
Mm-hmm.
be dreamers. We tend to, you know, look way out in the future, and we need people around us that are also like very detail oriented. We have the skill sets to do that, but being very, very clear and honest about what you really are at your core is incredibly important to us. And then experience, right? Like understanding not only your experience in real estate, but what your experience is as a person, as an individual. What's your journey? So we have some of our co-GPs are military based, right? And they're still active duty, very focused, very committed, and they're doers. They're the kind of guys that say, hey, we're going to do this, and they do it. So starting off, you know, small, starting off with some pieces, you know, this is, we explain it that this is a long game for us. So we're not super interested in jumping in with a bunch of different people all at once. So that, I mean, in short, that's kind of how we vet them. And I can get into some more detail if we need to, but a lot of it has to do with experience, but a lot of it is a fit, you know, slow to hire, quick to fire kind of type of situation where we want to make sure we're getting in bed with the right people. As far as investors are concerned, there are some regulations and some guidelines around that. So we always like to have a conversation and face-to-face if possible with people who are looking to invest money with us. And that's for a couple of different reasons. Number one, there are SEC regulations, especially when you get into 506B situations where you need to have an established relationship with these people. We need to understand, is this an investment that you can make intelligently? Is this something that's, you know, are we clearing out your savings account, or is this something that you want to be investing with so you can grow? Because no matter what you do, no matter what investing it is, and no matter what anybody tells you, investing does involve risk, right? Like I'm not an attorney, I'm not a professional advisor, but what we do is we always make sure that people understand where they're jumping in at and the why. Because I think it's also important that if you have somebody that you're talking to as an investment person that tells you you need to invest with them, I would ask a lot of questions about why. What we do is we say, hey, this is who we are. This is our style. This is our zone. This is what we're trying to get done. If you don't fit with us, we're happy to show you other places. We also are getting into capital raising for other people's deals on purpose, right? There's a lot of different people that have a lot of different viewpoints on how this works. And we want to make sure that we're matching our people with those viewpoints. And also, you know, this might not be the space. This might not be the space for a lot of people because this is an illiquid, for the most part. It's an illiquid investment for a period of time. That period of time changes, but it's not like the stock market. You can't throw it in today and grab it back out. Right. And I think there's a lot of people that do a good job of explaining that super well. So that's when we talk to our people, we have long conversations about the why you want to get in here and who you are. And then we'll see if it matches.
One thing that I like to talk about a lot is alignment. I think you can boil a lot of things down with partnerships to that one word. Are you guys aligned? I've been in a partnership, spent 2.5, 3 years in a partnership where we started out where our alignment was we all wanted to start buying properties. And to be quite honest with you, that was the end of our alignment. But as things went on, we started drifting further and further apart. Not that they were wrong, I was right, or vice versa, but so now when I'm looking at partnerships, when I'm looking at potential partners, one thing I'm very careful to ask is alignment and core values. You know, our core values have to match. And that's at the base level. You know, if your core values are out of alignment, there are going to be problems later on, you know, or there are going to be inconsistencies or friction later on. But yeah, if your core values at least are in alignment, you're going to do well, you know, together. So that's, you know, my only thing is alignment. And that goes with the passive investors as well. So whether you're looking for partners or passive investors, make sure you're aligned.
Okay. That's a good point. In terms of your experience in your deals, like what has been the most costly experience that you've had due to an oversight? And, you know, Brian, with what you just said, in terms of your alignment with that, you know, with the particular deal you're thinking about, just started and stopped at that. Is there an experience from that to say?
As far as specific deals, I mean, our alignment was more in philosophies, how we manage the deals. There were probably some inconsistencies in, you know, how we thought things should get managed, how communication between partners should go. Fortunately, it didn't really trickle over into a lot of the deals. It was just a lot of internal, you know, and the internal friction got to the point to where we had a hard time working together. You know, there are probably second order effects of that kind of spilled over into the deals and the management of the deals. But I mean, for the most part, you know, I think it's just mostly internal. So, Yeah.
I've got a good example for you that I think it's what you're asking for. Early on, we hired a property manager, and the way that the contract was written was not incredibly favorable to us. I didn't think it was a bad contract, to be honest with you. I mean, as an attorney, you know that you write contracts for when things go wrong, not when things go right. The way that it was written as far as incentives, we just didn't know what we didn't know at that point. And that was, the way a lot of times you'll see contracts for property management, there's tons and tons of fees in there. There's a half a month's rent for the first month when they get a new tenant in, and there's late fees, or there's dog pet fees, or whatever there might be. There's just lots of fees in that structure. And it essentially, it depends on the property manager, please, I don't want to paint with too broad a brush here, but if you're incentivizing a person to gain most of their money off of those fees, as opposed to actually gaining growing the property with you, you might be setting yourself up for failure. And that's what we did in that case. So when they got their 8%, no matter what they did, right? So if they grew it a little bit, but their incentive didn't change, they were still gaining money off of late fees. So it didn't encourage them too much to really push that. And yes, caveat that, dealing with tenants and late fees is a good property management company is worth their weight in gold. But if you can create a situation contractually where you say, hey, we're going to put all of these fees into a pot, this becomes a part of our whole pot, and your percentage is based on all of this as well. I'm happy to go even a higher percentage. And when we get up to the top echelons, I'm willing to pay you even more than you're asking for, because that means that we're growing together and we're slaying it. We're doing a great job. That was the costliest effect. And we ended up having to fire a property manager over that situation and get a new one, which in its own right is super expensive, both monetarily and it's time, because then you're losing rents and people are turning over. That's one thing. It's just, how are you meeting people where they are, in the sense that, how are they going to be most motivated?
Yeah, I was going to say that's a great example, and creative in the sense of creating that pool, and if I'm understanding you, their payment still remained, whatever that percentage is outside of this pot, but that's cool. So question, this was inspired by some videos and things that I was listening to, in terms of, if someone just brings you a deal to say, hey, I found this property and looking to do it, etc., how would they ask for their equity stake or stake in there, or the investors are the ones that's going to be the one that kind of dedicate how much they want, or dictate how much they want to put in there? So basically, overall, how would you advise people on structuring, an equity stake?
First of all, I'm not an attorney, but
yes, we know that.
Yeah.
From your experience.
But based on that, I think it's hard, and I hate the answer. It depends, but in this case, it really depends, because it depends on the size, it depends on the capital stack you're going to require, and then really how you set that deal up. So, and this happens all the time, which I love. And a lot of people, we've got a guy that comes to our meetup regularly, and the guy is a hustler. He shows up every single month with 4 new deals, and it's incredible. Most of them don't pencil, but he's still working super hard. So I think the goal here is let's talk through this and the why behind it. If it's big enough and it needs to be syndicated, it's meaning that there's not enough money in both of our pools or in our collective pools to joint venture that, and needs to be syndicated. There's a very specific deal structure for that, in which case he becomes a GP. We would become a GP. If there's a need for it, I was talking to Brian before the show, he's a KP on a lot of these deals. There's requirements for experience. There's requirements for net worth. So it really depends on, who's bringing the deal and what parameters they're coming from. Do they have a bunch of money and just don't have any experience? You might be able to JV that. Do they have a bunch of experience, but they just are completely illiquid right now? They don't have any money. We may need to find some money. We need to find a KP. Cool. There's a lot of different circumstances that go into that. A lot of times we find that it's people that are new to the game. They're learning some of these things, in which case, if it's, if it makes sense to JV, or if you have a couple of investors that have a higher net worth and say, hey, this makes a bunch of sense, we'll come in, we'll help you run it. But then that equity percentage is probably highest for the people that have that. I mean, one of our very first deals, we found the deal, and the person who put in the vast majority of the money obviously got the bigger chunk, but we got a tiny chunk of that piece, which is how we got started, by doing the work and doing the legwork. So does that answer your question?
No, that does, because I know someone like yourself that he's always out there. He can find anything anywhere. And so when I told him about looking to move into this space, that was one of our questions and conversations that we're having. It's okay, so if I find you something, then, how do we, and I was like,
Yeah.
you know, and I knew this podcast was coming up. So it's like, let me ask.
Most people who are willing to take deals like that on usually kind of have almost like a template, you know, this much goes towards that, this much goes towards that, you know? So, I mean, when we come in, we have several people ask us, you know, new people need generally, and this is not always the case, but most people who are new to the business to get a loan, they need help with either the net worth, the liquidity, or the experience. Almost always the experience. The other two are kind of hit or miss. You know, so we have an idea of, you know, what we're going to, in air quotes, charge, you know, as far as percentage of fee, you know, to come in as a KP based on what functions we're performing and what functions they're performing. But, you know, bottom line, the more value that you're adding, the larger percentage of that GP you can negotiate.
Yeah, that was what I was going to say. Like reaching out to somebody like a Brian, if they're bringing, so you have somebody bringing you a deal and you're also fairly new to the space, but you're going to gain a piece of that equity. Find somebody like a Brian that can help you out and show you the way, and then getting a chunk, like getting just even a little chunk of a deal and getting some experience is invaluable. It really is.
Yeah, that's definitely kind of the thought behind it. It's like, it's not, you know, especially the first deal, it's not the amount in terms of money you're gaining from it, but it's the experience of being there and being involved in seeing it.
Yeah. What's the saying? 2% of a deal is more than 100% of no deal.
Yeah,
exactly.
I've done very well with single digit percentages of large deals. It's usually double digit percentages of GPs, but it turns into single digit percentages of large deals. I've done very well with lots of little slivers. Yep.
Okay.
We got time for one more question. If you got another one, Patrice.
Sure. What factors do you use to decide? It kind of flows from the discussion that we're just having, but what factors do you use to decide how much capital you may want to invest in a project? So not the amount of money, but the factors you contemplate when you're investing.
As an LP is coming into somebody else's deal, I think it looks looking at metrics, right there, and really understanding the why behind the deal. So you'll usually get a packet, or that somebody will give you a presentation and say, hey, this is the deal. You'll see X IRR, you'll see X cash on cash. This is what you can expect to make. Here's our exit. Asking about, okay, what happens when things go wrong? Because in my opinion, this comes from like, I'm a little bit salty and coming from event space. Like we'll make a plan and inevitably something will go wrong. And I think that's the exact same way in real estate. Like you have a plan, you maximize that plan, but understanding that there will inevitably be something that goes wrong. Somebody's going to drive a car through the front of the building. Something's going to set on fire. Something like there's going to be a hurricane. There will, and probably more probably than not, over the course of that hold, something's going to happen. And it could be like what we're experiencing right now. Like the exit doesn't look the same for a property right now that it did a year ago. So if we have to sit on and say, hey, you've told me this is a 3-year exit. What happens if we can't exit 3 years? And if they don't have a good answer for that, then you should ask why, right? So that's why having somebody who plans out a 3, a 5, a 7, and even a 10 for what that looks like, in my opinion, if I'm investing money with somebody else, as a very top line answer, because that kind of delves into a lot of other pieces. For us as GPs, when we're looking at bringing other people's money into our deals or what we're going to invest in, we've got a pretty robust back end due diligence sheet that we go through. And if you're interested, you can find it on our website as well. The way we actually it hits a lot of the things we ask all of our folks. But the biggest thing is really, do we think we can do some good here? Not only just monetarily, but do we think like, you know, we find assets that need some love, and then what timeline do we think we can get that done? And again, you're guessing, because you're always going to find something after due diligence. No matter how good you are, you're going to find something that you didn't expect or, you know, didn't show up. So what, and how are we protecting that? So we build our plan around that. We build our plan around, this is what happens when it goes right. Also, we know something's going to go wrong, so we need a little bit of addition to that. And here's how much money we need if we're going to do some good here. And then we run the numbers. At the end of the day, the numbers don't lie. If you add that up and the numbers don't match, walk away. Because there's too many people that talk themselves into a deal as opposed to being like, this is what it's going to be.
Now, Ben, I got to ask, have you had somebody drive a car through one of your buildings?
Not personally, but I have a good friend who that just happened to.
Okay.
I was going to say that was a pretty specific example.
Yeah.
I've actually had it happen. It wasn't a property that I owned, but it's where I worked. You know, somebody got frustrated and drove their car into the building that I worked in. And that's why I asked. It was anyway. Yeah, it was on a Marine Corps base. It was long
Apparently,
time ago.
It happens more often than not. Like when I was having a conversation with him, he's like, talking to the insurance people, this happens fairly regularly.
Yeah. It was purposeful too. It was just like, a disgruntled, employee. I'm going to get back at them. And yeah. So I ended
Happens
up
all the time.
I flighted out, but okay.
We took over a property and our first turned unit was vandalized by the former resident from the former owner, which we couldn't have anticipated.
Yep. All right. Well, cool. So thanks for your time, guys. I got one last question for each of you as we wrap up. And Ben, you get to go first. How can listeners learn more about you?
Certainly. Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn. This is Ben Nelson 303. Same on Instagram, or you can reach out to me, ben@wildoakcapital.com.
All right. Awesome. And Patrice, same thing for you. How can listeners learn more about you?
I am more active on Instagram, even though it's not a consistent, and I'm at real, REAL _law _ESQ, or they can email me at ptisdale@reallawesq.com.
Awesome. All right. And we'll have that information for both of you guys in the show notes. So if anybody is interested in connecting, I would encourage people listening. People give out their contact information because they want to connect, but encourage anybody, just hit the show notes and, tap their contact information and get a hold of them. So that said, once again, thanks for coming on the show today. I very much appreciate your guys' time.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Hey, if you like that episode, make sure to subscribe. But more importantly, if you haven't joined our multifamily educational community yet, which we call the Tribe of Titans, you are missing out. Get 30 days free by clicking the link in the description to this episode, or go to thetribeoftitans.info, and we'll see you there.